Okay, so a brief overview of what we learned the other day. The two things we need to learn, the two specific vocab words is calling a function and defining a function. So like I just answered with Ezra, to define a function means to create it. Just like we create x is 10, you can't do that with functions because x is 10. That variable thing, that name equals a value is already taken by variables. So they had to come up with essentially a new way to have a way to create functions. And the way you do that is by defining it. So you use the words def. If you type define, it doesn't work. So it has to be def. And now you type the function name. So for you guys, it'd be like problem 1, parentheses and a colon. Now everything we enter is indented once. That means it's part of the function. And again, as soon as we get outside, as soon as something is unindented, this is not in the function. So this print, no matter, or when we run this file, will always print this. But it will only print hello if we call the function. And the way we call a function is just by typing the function name and adding the parentheses. Does that make sense? Now, in your guys' homework, reading of the book and doing those problems, you can add a value or a variable inside of these parentheses. There's a reason why there's parentheses and why we use parentheses in so many different commands that we use. So we use list one dot append parentheses. What we put in the parentheses will get added to the list because append is a function built into Python. It doesn't change color because it's defined and created and stored by Python. We don't create it. We also have random.randint. I showed you guys in the random code, the random source file, that we have to give it numbers. These are parameters given to a function. Just like even with print. Hello. We separate by commas and we can add parameters like this. So there's a reason all of these parentheses, random.choice, we have to put a list in there. But notice we still have the parentheses because choice is a function to which we pass parameters or arguments. Does that make sense? In concept, right? What's iffy, Josh? It's just if you have something followed by parentheses, it is a function. It may not be a function you wrote, but it's a function. Exactly like print. Print is a built-in function, and because it's so important, it changes color.
What is like the inner workings of print then?
That's a very good question, and I don't know.
Because you think that like instead of print, but like you can't do that. It's probably like font something or whatever. Do you have other things inside functions instead of functions?
Yep, and that's what we're going to get to today.
That's what we have, right?
Yeah, so this is a function inside of a function, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
But ones that we want to create.
Yeah,
so you got your guys' homework was to have name is input to ask the user for their name. And then you were supposed to take that name and pass it and display it. I'm pulling up the assignment right now so I don't get it wrong. Please enter your name, and then our function was to say, hi Zach, I am pleased to meet you. Please enter your age. Thank you. So the reason I did this was because I wanted you guys to know that you can have variables passed to a function. Now, how do I do that? How have we passed variables to functions before?
Like if we ask for an input,
Yep, and we create the variable, and we do that here.
Print the input.
We print the input. Yeah, and how did we do that? We had the word print.
We put the variable inside print.
Yep, we put the variable inside the print parentheses. So where do you think we need to do that? Here. You guys all should have read the book, and you guys all should know this. How do I get name passed to problem 1 function? Inside the parentheses, yes. Now what this allows me is I can print name. Now, do you guys see an error? I did that. Oh, down here? Oh, she's correct. So, functions part 2.
Putting name instead of parentheses, like, it was kind of exactly what it does.
So if I want name, let's say I have a bunch of functions, right? Define problem 2,
Pretty much the same.
and I want all of them to print. I want them to print everything. I want them to do the exact same thing, which you wouldn't actually do, but I don't want to come up with an actual. So instead of asking for my name inside each one of these functions, I can ask for my name once and then pass that information to as many functions as I'd like.
Oh, so putting it in parentheses.
Putting it here
Yeah.
means this problem 1 cannot be called correctly if you don't have a variable in here. So watch this. If I don't have this here, it's going to say problem 1, that's our function. It's missing one required positional argument, name. So it's saying you're missing a variable called name, and you need to put it in here.
So couldn't you use that? It's like a while loop? I mean, wait, no. So it could be variable, but like, it's like that won't run out, so you have to.
Yeah, I have to put name in there. Now the cool thing about this is if I were to do salary, this might make a little bit more sense. Let's say I'm doing, I work for an accounting company, right? And I'm going to need to do a bunch of things with someone's salary. I could ask for their salary a bajillion times, or I can ask it once and I can have it. Now this is define problem 1. This is income tax. So your income tax is in the state of Illinois. The state Illinois has a 15% state income tax. So we want to print 0.015 times. Yeah, that's one of the things that was on the ballot to be changed election day, was to change that and have it be a graduated. Or I think it was progressive. So like the less amount you make, the lower amount in taxes you have to make. So, but it didn't pass. At least it didn't pass, right? Everyone pays 15% for the Illinois state income tax. Yes. Oh, thank you. I was wondering if anyone was going to catch that. Yeah, that was just a really good test that you guys passed. Okay, so income tax. So I'm going to put income tax. Okay, so now there may be more things that you want to do, deductions for your income tax or whatever, but we're just going to have this be very simple. It's just going to display my income tax.
It's so cool.
Okay, well now I also want to do my federal income tax, so maybe I change this to Illinois income tax and I change this to Fed _ income tax. But it still has to do with the same salary, so I'm going to still get that salary. And now I can go, well, the federal income tax is, I'm going to make up a number. I'm going to say it's 20% of your income. Well, a federal income tax is different because that is progressive. So if you make less than, I don't know this, and I'm not trying to like pretend to be a tax expert, so I'm just making up numbers so people on YouTube don't kill me because I'm wrong. If you make less than $30,000, you owe 0% in income tax. If you make $30,001 to $50,000, you owe 5%, right? I'm making up these numbers. So what we would do is we would go, if salary is less than 30,000, print you owe nothing in Fed income tax. Probably not. And again, I may assign the final today, and you guys will take the quiz Friday, which will give you guys a little bit more time to look up some stuff, work on it. Yes, because that's all I was going to do is give you a quiz on that and announce your final on Friday. So if I switch those a little bit, I don't think it'll mess you guys up. Yes, Catherine. The quiz will be on functions. And then during the next 2 weeks, so after Thanksgiving, I'll probably give you a quiz/test. I haven't decided which one. I'll probably look at whatever on Pygame, and you'll take half a day to a day just to do that real quick. But it's not going to be, the Pygame test is not going to be like, build a whole game. It'll be like, which one of these commands does this? And you have to, it's like multiple choice, and then it may be like, put these 7 lines in order to create a window. And you have to like put them in order. Because again, I'm not going to have you guys, because I couldn't build a game from scratch without having something like, I have to initialize, I have to create a screen, I have to do this, I have to do that. Well, at least, actually I think I could, but you know what I mean. Like, you're never going to code, you will almost never code in a vacuum. After functions, we're done with new concepts, yes. There are things in the book if you would like to use for your game. So if someone were to type in, for example, if you want someone to type in their name for their game, but you don't want any letters, or I'm sorry, you don't want any numbers, you can verify if the string they've typed in consists only of letters. And that would be, you know, string 123 dot is digit. So is digit means, is this made up of all numbers? Then you have is alpha, is this made up of the alphabet? So this would be false, so you would ask them over and over until this became true. That just displays that's something we haven't learned in class, that if you implement it correctly would count as something we haven't learned in class. And again, guys, I don't want to get too far into the weeds of the final because I'm going to spend time either today or all of Friday. So you owe nothing of federal income tax, and if salary is greater than 30, greater than or equal to 30,000, and salary is less than, I'm going to make up numbers because 50,000, print you owe salary times 0.3. I'm gonna so if we make $10,000, oop, prob 1 is wrong. So you guys notice what this is saying. I want you to read this error and tell me what's wrong. So basically, prob 1, salary, name error. Name prob 1 is not defined.
Oh, you don't have a defined prob 1.
Right.
Yeah, it's not prob 1,
It's ill income tax, and we'll run into the same issue with prob 2. Please enter my salary. I owe $1,500 in tax, and I owe nothing in federal income tax. Woohoo! And let's say if I make 45,000, not 450,000. Oh, you owe, not own. Okay. So does that make sense? This is the reason why this is called passing variables to a function, passing arguments to a function. I have a salary and I pass that information to my function. A fun little fact, if you don't want to ask the user, you can comment that out and I can type in this value. Oh, hang on. Wait, how do I do? Okay, hang on, I screwed something up. Sorry, I feel stupid now. So I think that only works over here. Command. Yeah. So notice one thing I want you guys to see real quick. This is when using the built-in functions of the shell and console are really helpful. So if I comment out this obviously won't work because I'm trying to put a variable that has not been defined into the function. Make sense? Yeah. However, if I'm in the shell and I type Illinois income tax, it tells me that it needs salary. It needs a variable in order to run. So if I'm like typically you don't call functions from the shell. I do when I'm trying to check your homework. But that's just something like, oh yeah, I have to put something in here for this function to run because if I don't, I get this error. So that's just a little easy, you know, when we do list1.append, actually that's, see how we have all of these options for what we can do to a list? It's kind of the same thing when we type in a function name. Oops. And then it pops up, hey, I need to put that, I need to have a variable. Does that make sense? Okay. One thing I want you guys to know is this variable in the defining of the function, this variable does not need to match this. So this can be x. Only 2 of you are looking at the screen and I'm trying. So right here, this passed argument could be x, but this has to match this. So the variable inside the function has to match the variable in the definition of the function, but the variable in the definition of the function does not have to match this. But it does have to match here. What this is saying, so in the definition of the function, let's say define clothing for Ezra, a shirt. This could be anything. This is an article of clothing. Whatever article of clothing is here, Ezra puts on. Okay? And I go, what color, what shirt, what clothing do you want? And I pass clothing here. I pass shirt, the variable. It doesn't matter that I've called it a shirt. It's still an article of clothing that he puts on.
Oh, so X is now salary?
X becomes X here becomes whatever this is.
Okay.
That's not super important, but there is times in books and in other code where these things don't necessarily match up. I just want to let you know that that's an option. For coding's sake, it is better to have salary. Okay, you'll probably run into fewer errors if you do it that way. I just want to let you know that this and these have to match. This and that have to match, but these two do not have to match. Thank you, Josh. I didn't think so either. Well, because this is just any variable. This defines that one variable has to get passed to the Illinois income tax. Doesn't matter what this is called. This does not have to match that in order for it to work. But if you define something and you use that later, think of it this way. That's in a different file. Dang it, it didn't copy. So this is in a different file, and we've imported it. So it makes sense that these two have to match, right? And it makes sense that these two have to match because they're in the same file. But it doesn't necessarily matter if this matches this, because this is in a different file, and this is just saying, hey, any variable that gets passed to income tax gets printed like that. Does that make it seem a little, does that make a little more sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you can code in such a way to where all your functions are in a different file. So, okay. What questions do you guys have? And lady? Sonny, you're confused. Are you confused on what I was just talking about?
Yes.
Okay. So, imagine... What? So imagine I've imported this file. Imported okay, let's just say I've imported my function. This function here that I've imported is in a different file. Okay, this over here is in a different file. It makes sense that this variable and this variable have to match. Because one, if these two don't match, okay, I've loaded it up, copy, and I type in, I get an error because salary isn't defined. So this has to match this in order this variable, the variable that's passed, these two have to match, otherwise you'll get this error. Because one or two of these, this one doesn't matter, this doesn't matter, this could be minus the space. Right? It could be anything. This is just a variable has to be here. Information has to be here. The important thing is that this and that match, because if this variable here doesn't match, you get this name error because you never defined salary. So if that's the case, and those have to match, it's the same thing here. I can't pass information to a variable if it hasn't been defined. So I define salary and I pass salary to the function, but because this just means, hey, I have a function, I have a variable passed to this function, these don't have to match because even if they're in different files, it doesn't matter because you can think of them as being in separate files, those two don't have to match.
So we can just type X.
You could type X for here, but then you'd have to change it there. This is not something that's going to be huge or whatever. I just wanted to tell you guys that. It's not that often used, especially in this class. I tell students use the same variable name for lack of confusion. However, in your coding and all that stuff, in your research for your final, if you run into something like that, that's why. Make sense? Ness, yo, maybe so.
Yes.
Okay. So now the last thing I want to go over is something similar to this, but what if inside of this function I want to run this? So instead of running this code and then running this code, what if all I wanted to have, I wanted to call one function that does stuff, and then that function calls the second function. A function within a function. Well, no. Calling a function inside of a function. You can't have a function inside of a function.
So defining a function and then calling a function inside of a function. So the second function is called both functions?
The first function, if you call the first function, both functions run. That's what we want. We don't want two individual things. So there's two things I need to do in order to do this. And it really is just manipulating the code. I'm not retyping or changing anything. I'm just moving things around. What do I have to indent?
Wait, which one do you want to choose?
I want this code, I want this first function to call the second function.
Okay. Then move the first function like after
I have to move this one.
like yeah, inside the first.
No. I don't have to retype anything. Josh and then Ezra. See,
So move it down below.
move this down below here. Okay.
And then
Ezra, do you know what to do next?
That's not what I was going to say. That's right. I'm wrong.
Oh, that is right.
Okay.
Okay. Josh?
and then indent the whole, like not that part, the part above it.
This part?
That, the whole thing. Indent.
Nope, that is not correct.
Wait, no.
I can't define a function inside of another function. So I can't do that. Who else has an idea? Just start spitballing stuff out there. Doesn't matter if you're right or wrong.
You define the function and then you call it.
I've already done that.
Then the
Oh.
last one.
Now call the function.
That's
and
what.
the other function.
Yeah. So that's we've already called the function. This is correct. This here is correct. So we don't need to move that. Peter, I'm not 100% understanding what you're saying.
Move the Fed income tax into the function of the other one. That. Yeah.
So you're saying put it here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Put it in the place of the salary.
Wait, you need to define.
Put it in the place of the salary.
That's what. Is that
No.
no? Okay.
That'd be cool though.
This is correct.
What?
Right.
But you need to define it first. You need to define it.
No, that one doesn't make sense.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
Right, no, that.
Bruh.
So the way this works, remember, Python runs through the code once, loading in, hey, this is a function, boom, we're good. So it runs through and creates this, and it kind of ignores what's in here. It doesn't run it. It makes sure there's no syntax errors, but then it's like, okay, so we've loaded this into memory. Okay, this is going to do some stuff. There's nothing syntactically wrong in there. We're just going to run over it. Then it loads this one in. Same thing with all this. There's same thing with all this. There's no syntax errors. We're going to kind of skim over it. Okay, now we're actually going to run the code. This tells us we got to run our income, Illinois income. So we come up here, we print the information. Then this goes, oh, now we got to run this function. It jumps down to this function and starts running it. You can think of this two ways. I'm going to write some new functions. I'm going to write the functions but with different names. Actually, I should just copy this. Okay, so think of it this way. You guys all know how football works, right? Who does not know? What?
There's an R after the
Oh.
The last line, the very last line.
Oh, you find
Is that not? There you go.
There we go.
Would've worked more hard.
Oh, it would have worked, but yeah.
Oh.
So quarterback. Those of you who don't know, you have a quarterback who gets the football, calls the play, and throws the ball. The receiver is the person who catches the ball. So you can think of this as football is the information we're passing between these two. The quarterback starts with the football, and then he passes the receiver the football. The receiver receives the football and then runs the code. And then at the beginning, what we do is the quarterback is the person in charge of starting it all. That gets more confusing. Yeah, if you don't know football, that'll probably get more confusing. But those of you who do, what sport are you familiar with? Softball.
Badminton.
I was like, sports except football.
All sports except football. Okay. Sonny, what about you? Do you get football?
Yes, but just like I think you should change the salary to.
Oh, yeah, he's calling out the error. Nice job. Good catch. I was wondering why no one caught that. Jeez. So, in another sport,
I don't know football either.
Oh, thank you.
You know the basics.
Do you know
I know rock climbing, that's about it.
rock climbing? Okay, so rock climbing. You have a belay and the climber, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Okay, so the belay and the climber. The belay has to tell the no, because the climber decides which rock to grab.
Oh wait, I got one. The belayer.
Yeah.
Right? They say on belay, they send that information to the person.
Oh yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so football. This is the information. This is you can think of this as confirmation. The information that needs to pass between the belayer and the climber. And the belayer, this should be belayer. Goes on belay.
Can we just do like algebra or something? I feel like it would.
No, that was
Okay, I can't. I can only make it work with football.
Let's just do football.
Yes.
Yeah, but not everyone knows football.
Like explain football in very
Just do football and we'll just sit silently as we're.
No.
Quarterback gets the ball.
Peter, do you understand that the quarterback receives the football? The quarterback is the person that says hike.
Yes.
They're given the football, and then they decide to throw it to someone.
Yes, I know the basics.
Okay, that's all you need to know. Okay, that's it. The quarterback is the head honcho. He's in charge of the team. He's the one that decides the play, more or less. Maybe, I don't know. But in my universe it is. So the quarterback decides the play, and this is the football, right? He has the information. He says, hike. This is him saying hike. Now he has the football, right? Because we gotten the information from the user. He has the football, and he's doing his thing, right? Whatever that is. You know, he may be waiting. He may be trying to do a QB sneak. He may be, you know, handing it off or whatever. He's getting himself into position. And then this is the transfer from the quarterback to the receiver. The football gets passed. So he then throws it or hands it off or whatever he does. And now the receiver does his play. The receiver then starts running down. He catches it and he's dodging and all that sort of stuff. And that's the function that he's running. And we only have one hike. That's such a weird. and it ends with a hike.
What? It ends with a touchdown.
Exactly. That made no sense. The ending of that explanation made no sense. All right. You only call if you have information passing between two functions. You have one function that figures stuff out and then it passes it to a second function. You only call the first function. You only ever call the first function outside of functions. Once you get into the first function, that's when you call the second. Because the second function is dependent on the first one. The first one is figuring something out and then passing it off to the second function.
Wait, can you run this?
It just ran it twice because I have it down here and up here.
Yeah, I was going to die.
So what you can do is you can also have, you could do salary equals, now it equals $1 bajillion. No matter what they type in, it's going to pass $1 bajillion.
That's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's actually a number. Or no? I don't know.
I don't know, but is it a G or a J?
Yeah, okay. G.
No, it's definitely G.
Yeah, it's
That'd be bajillion.
Oh, it's definitely J. What?
So even if I type in $1 up here, it's still passing this information. So I could have this be what's, and it doesn't matter. It's still going to be a bajillion dollars. Notice, this does not match that.
Yeah.
That goes back to what I was saying earlier, that these two things don't need to match. What time? Oh, hang on, I know. Till noon. What questions do you all have? Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything big from the book. And functions, you guys did that. Local and global.
You call a function, but with like a different variable in the parentheses, and just replace it.
Yes, I think. Oh, the last thing. This is the last thing with functions. Local and global variables. A local variable is only available inside of that function. Okay, it's local. So I'm going to get rid of this football debacle. So define problem 1. Name is input. So this is info gathering. We're going to do a bunch of stuff. We're going to get there. Age. I get that was very fast for me to type, so I'm going to leave that up for a few minutes. Well, you guys can or you don't have to. Again, all my note codes are available online after class. So, actually, no, just pay attention up here for a minute. So let's run info gather, and then print name, age, wage. So what this should do is it should run. I'll comment all that out. It should gather the aim, age, wage, and then display those. Display those variables. So please enter your name, Zach, 29, Samik, 1234. Wait. Why is name is not defined, but I defined it right here. I called it outside of the function. These 3 variables only exist inside of this function. They're local variables. It's like, that's it. They can only be used inside of that function.
Like if you didn't run the function,
That's exactly it. If I don't run the function, they don't exist. Even if I run the function, they only exist here.
It's basically storing instructions inside of a smaller set of instructions with a different function, and nothing happens until a function is called and what's inside the function.
Yes.
If you print them inside the function and then display the function.
If I print them here, 100% it works.
You have more.
Oh, because I need to name, give me a name.
Gerald. Ezra.
I like Gerald. Is that how you spell? Whatever. Please enter your name, Zach, 234, and I make 1243. So it prints Zach 234 1243 because that's what's happened. That's what's happening here. All right, and I'll even add inside function, outside function.
So why do you need to define names for the fields?
Because I want to show you.
It's not necessary.
Well, it's saying age is not defined.
Yeah, you define name, you don't have age.
I have name, yeah.
You're asking for age and wage outside of the function, so they have nothing.
Right, but so if I get rid of please enter name, I type in Zach, I type in my age, and I type in how much I make, it prints Gerald.
That's outside the function.
Because name here is these two are outside of the function. Name here is Gerald, and we print name, which and it yes. Does that make sense? This is outside of the function, so it can be used anywhere outside of a function. This is created inside of a function. This can only be used inside of that specific function. This is global. This is local. If you have a variable that is created outside of any function, it can be used outside of any function. Make sense? If you have a variable created inside of a function, it can only be used inside of that function. So these are all local. And this is global. Make sense? Now, if I want this name to be used inside of this function, what do I have to do? What?
Oh, Gerald,
Yeah, I want Gerald to be usable inside of here.
put it in the first.
I'd have to put it in here. Yep, I'd have to put name. What else would I have to do?
You have to make it so it's defined name.
Well, I have to put name down here too. Now, you can make local functions global. And the way you do that, this is so weird. Oopsies. Sorry about that. Notice it is before we actually define it.
You have to make name global? No, you have.
Wait, what? Wait. Oh,
Called it.
because if you do it, maybe it had trouble. Maybe the people that make these functions or the code of the function. Maybe they like had a
If you switch it, it freaks out. I can't remember the error you get, but you get an error.
Yeah.
Now, I am going to read something from the book. You should not use global functions. Hang on. Where does it say? Does it not have the warning here? Well, it does not. Hang on. The reason Python has different scopes instead of just making everything a global variable is so that when variables are modified by the code, in particular called the function interacts with the rest of the program, blah, 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 blah. If your program contained nothing but global variables and had a bug because of a variable being set to a bad value, then it would be hard to track down where this bad value was set. It could have been set anywhere in the program, and your program could be hundreds or thousands of lines long. But if the bug is caused by a local variable with a bad value, you know that only the code in that one function could have set it incorrectly. While using global variables in small programs is fine, it is a bad habit to rely on global variables as your programs get larger and larger. So basically what that's saying is if I had every student, right, think of it this way. Every student in here in this classroom is just in this classroom. What if I accidentally named every student in every classroom your guys' names? And then one of them was failing. Well, how do I know which one's failing? It's everyone and no one. Like, so it's bad. But in this individual classroom, that's why you kind of want to have different variables and different scopes. You don't want everything to be global because as you get more and more and more programs, more and more lines, it gets harder to track down errors. Yes, Catherine.
Like it's hard to make up all the names different than the ones before.
Say that again?
So it's hard to make up like hundreds of names, different names, variables. And just use like the
Well, it depends. No.
three.
Yeah, don't use the same. Yeah. It kind of. Yeah, if you keep overwriting the same 3 variables, you're going to get an error and you're not going to know exactly 100% where you made the mistake. Whereas if you have individualized variable names, it's a lot easier to find the error. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's correct.
Okay. That's it for functions. Now, obviously, I know we had like 2 days on it, but I think there'll be a quiz on functions on Friday. Multiple choice. Make sure you know call and define. For vocab, make sure you know what local and global means. Make sure you know how to find a local. If I were to say this variable, is this variable local or global? And I picked one, so let me look at this. Granted, this is kind of cheating. It actually, well, if I were to say name is a global or local variable, just shout it out. It's global because it's not inside of a function. Any variable inside of a function is going to be local. I don't think I'm going to get tricky and have, name and be like, well, what's name? But it's also local. It is global, but.
So it depends on when that, before the function is called, name is what it is, globally, what they're talking. But then when the function is called, it changes.
It's a global it's a global variable passed to a function. So if it is defined inside of a function, it's local. If it's defined outside of a function, it's global. So just be able to pick that out. If it's defined outside of a function, it's global. If it's defined inside of a function, it's local. So you'll need to know that. Passing variables from one function to another is important. You will need to know how to do that. So it'll probably be 10 or 15 multiple choice questions, maybe, and then 1 coding question. Okay?
Like coding paper or coding on?
Coding on your Surface. And then the pie game will be more on paper with maybe 1 coding. But I think putting stuff in order is a fun thing. Okay, so let me save this. Let me stop this recording.